Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Knights of Last Call. Joined today by, well, two guests, but one is running late. So joined by two guests today. It's members of our Patreon. It's members of our illustrious and elite GM Council. It is Whoople and Darth who are joining us to help me, help you, help us all kick off Season 4. I can't believe it's been, well, technically 5 seasons, but Season 4 of Northern Reaches. And of course, if you've been living under a rock, or maybe it's your first time seeing our channel because something in the title grabbed you and you said, "Whoa, Pathfinder 2, mega game, what's that?" Northern Reaches is, well, to the best of my knowledge, and since no one has ever corrected me, I'm going to go with it, is the most detailed, longest-running Pathfinder 2nd Edition mega campaign in existence. And certainly I could say that in terms of hours invested, no one could possibly come close to us in terms of the amount of work and effort that's been going into this. So what is a mega campaign? So a mega campaign, quite frankly, is a Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaign played with 50, 60, 70, 80 people, all living characters in the same continual, persistent world. And we have been running this as part of our Knights of Last Call Patreon for going on 5 years now. And the sort of the centerpiece or the hallmark of that is the main Northern Reaches campaign. And that is what we're here to talk about today. And Whoople is going to be able to answer your questions and mine about what is going on in Season 4. What is Northern Reaches? We'll answer any questions that you have in chat. You'll notice there is no stream goal. There's no tip to goal. And the reason is because all you need to do to become a part of this game is join the Patreon at $10. So instead of giving a tip or a super chat, I highly encourage you to just come check us out, join the campaign for $10, $20, play for a month or two, see if you like it, see if you like GMing, see if you like playing, see if you like the living, breathing world, give it a try. So that is my absolute first thing that I will say to you before we even get it started. All right. So Whoople, why don't you introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about you and sort of how you came to the Knights of Last Call, to Northern Reaches, and ultimately to your position on the GM Council.
Yeah, hey there, everyone. Whoople. I'm been with the Knights of Last Call for, I guess, a few years now. It's kind of, I was reflecting the other day about how long have I been part of this campaign. It's been a few years. I'm like, dang, that's the times are moving fast. What's funny is I actually found, I think the Knights of Last Call whenever I was GMing a home game for Quest for the Frozen Flame. And I saw some of the actual plays from the Knights on it, and I liked some of what you were doing, Derek, to rewrite some of the story beats in it, because I also was personally having challenges with that
sure.
adventure path, we'll say. So that was definitely some inspiration for me as I was working through it and trying to solve some of the problems. But after joining, I kind of immediately caught tail of, I happened to join just right about the time that Season 2 of Northern Reaches was starting. And so I'm like, whoa, what's this you guys are talking about? What's this Northern Reaches thing? Season 2's in a month, or something along those lines. And, came to find out it was the mega campaign, etc. Signed up first as a player, then as a GM. And yeah, it was a ton of fun. Had a lot of fun during Season 2. Definitely saw things throughout that I'm like, man, if only this was a little bit different, or we could make some changes, or, some improvements. And, certainly was happy when, the decision kind of came to bring let's say the GM Council, which was to basically take some of those voices, some of the people who were, running games and giving thoughts and feedback on what was happening, and give us the opportunity to contribute, as we started planning for the next seasons.
Yeah, and I think what Whoople is referring to here, I think is really important because when Northern Reaches was first started, it was sort of the brainchild of myself, Smith, and Bob, and the three of us that the sort of the Knights of Last Call were very much behind sort of the decisions and sort of the drive and the impetus of the campaign. And we were very removed from the campaign, which is to say, because we were not GMs, we were overlords, right? Because we had all the power, and no one could gainsay us because it's our channel, it's our stuff, and so we didn't really play. And and when we did GM, it was kind of usually a big event, and a lot of people wanted to join it, so it was kind of a special event, usually like a big raid or an end of season event. But one of the things that happened because of that is that as time went by, I think, I could speak for myself, but I think I feel confident speaking for Bob and Smith, is we became a little bit detached from what was happening and what was going on in the game. And some of our decisions were being made, if I'm going to be blunt, we were kind of making them, ad hoc, like we weren't really in touch with, we didn't have our finger on the pulse of the game and what the game was going to do. And maybe what I wanted out of the game wasn't what the growing community wanted out of the game. And so after season 2, we were getting ready for season 3, and we had some scheduling difficulties and some problems. And I said, oh, you know what? We're gonna launch a sort of a temporary season. It was called Southern Beaches, and it was kind of like hey, normally the games have like a lot of, there's a lot of tense action and political machinations and questions of existential nature. Southern Beaches is like, let's take a break from all that for a season. Let's just have fun. And I made a couple of like decisions that I thought were kind of more like, ha ha ha, no one will actually take this seriously. Everyone will hate this. Like, we got rid of experience points needed to level up. I was like, everybody automatically levels up once a week, get to level 20 in 20 weeks. And to my big surprise, this ended up working really well. But since nobody was really steering the boat, what we did was we said, hey, we had a group of players and GMs who were really, really engaged. We said, do you want to take on an extra role and help guide and steer this game? It's a volunteer job. We'll throw you some extra tickets, which is our made up currency that we have here on Night's Last Call. But for the most part, you're doing it for love of the game. And to our surprise, a bunch of people stepped up. And quite frankly, they just did a way better job than we ever did. So last season, season 3, we basically said, if you guys are up for it, you all can run the season. And partway through the season, we sort of increased the size of the GM Council. We brought on a bunch of new people to sort of represent old and new thoughts and ideals. We had some folks who wanted to step down and retire from the council, and we said that's great. We brought in some new blood and really reinvigorated it. And when I say that this GM Council is active and engaged, I mean, there in some ways it's like they're more engaged with it than we ever were, and it was our channel. So this is really a labor of love that is coming from this GM Council. And so that was season 3, which was still kind of sort of the old school. And that brings us to our new game, which is kicking off 420. Don't blaze it, path build it, which is going to be season 4. And this is truly what I will say, Whoople, I'll say this is now your guys' campaign, right? This is really your season because you guys kind of reinvented a lot of the structure, a lot of the lore from the ground up.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah. So tell me why we're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. One, we have the opportunity, and one of the things we wanted to do in season 4 was to try to go back to, how would I put it, the roots of a smaller setting, right? One of the challenges we felt in season 3 was Northport was growing and growing and growing. And just so people know, Northport is the main town that was kind of the center point of Northern Reaches from season 1 to season 2 to season 3, which grew, throughout those seasons with industry and, and things like that. Big trains added and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. So it got to the point where in season 3, we were talking about kind of like the noble families running things. And it's almost like, oh, wait, this is an actual, like, how would I put it? Almost like capital city at this point, the scale that it had grown because it needed to over time for like, from a storytelling perspective, it was continuing to grow over time.
Every season, I think this is one of the first things that we should note, is that the actions of previous seasons. Now, one of the reasons we do seasons is to sort of kind of wipe the slate clean free a little bit. Let new players join. Everybody kind of starts off at the same level so that you don't get this problem where, you might have people who are level 15 and you have, new people that are like level 3. And obviously in a game like Pathfinder 2, that creates a lot of problems. So we have this idea of like, let's reset the game. However, we don't like wipe the slate clean. The world from the prior seasons, the actions, the accomplishments, the consequences, your achievements carry forward into those new seasons. But as Whoople was talking about, you kind of get, I don't want to call it Absalom, but like, you kind of get this kind of water deep Absalom problem where, like, okay, well, we've saved the day so many times, we've won so much that, there's not much adventure left, in the Northern Reaches, right? In Northport.
Yeah. So with that, what we've tried to do from a lore perspective or a world perspective is say, well, what's the natural evolution? Well, of course, if this is a big central town, now they've started to have, let's say, settlements on the outskirts. And that's the setting for season 4 is let's focus in on one of those settlements and problems that they're facing, which is Frostclaim, is the name of the town. And basically idea being, hey, it is one settlement of many that Northport would have established that's out here kind of in what we're calling the Northern Wilds, where they're going to be responsible for bringing back magic crystals, for precious ore, for fish and whale fat from the nearby, quite large Arctic lake. But try to invent a new setting for us to play in where we can get back to that, that sense of smaller problems. It's not a big city that you have to deal with, but instead we can look at a particular settlement and solve it while still staying connected to that previous lore and respecting the growth that's been seen in the Reaches so far.
Right. So it's not a complete reset of the setting by any stretch of the imagination, but it is, I think, one of the largest changes that we've ever seen. And it's really trying to get back to some of those roots. Because the fact of the matter is when we do these resets, the levels go back. We used to start back at level 1. I think one season we tried starting at level 5. Is that, where are we starting this year? 5?
6. We're starting level 6.
Okay. Yeah. And Karima, another one of our Northern Reaches vets with a super chat says, logically, the next step is space. The truth is out there. Now, Karima, you may not want to hear this, but like one example of where things maybe got a little bit out of hand was, Starfinder got released and people were like, this is really cool. We should totally play with this. And we did. And Pubs Up people were like, I don't want your peanut butter, in my chocolate. Right. And, even with some of the prior seasons, there were certain things that got done that were, maybe a little bit tonally incorrect. By the way, it could be really silly or it could just be really dark. And so this was kind of an opportunity for us to kind of reset, I think, the parameters a little bit and bring things in.
Yeah. So we had
yeah, please.
Oh, I was going to say, we had the change in setting, but, also season 4 comes with refinements to all of our rules. Maybe not as much as we did in season 3 from like as far as a change in structure. But certainly one of the things, we mentioned there is, maybe it wasn't the right thing, or maybe there's the opportunity to make improvements, right? I think there's plenty of opportunities and changes that the council made this season from a rules perspective as well that we can go through or talk through.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I just kind of want to quickly, for anybody who's new and anybody who's watching, just to sort of make sure that we sort of set the correct understanding of what we mean by a mega game and why this is a little bit different or a lot of bit different than maybe some of the other games that you've played in the past. All right. So rule number 1 or thing number 1, which is a big deal, and I think you should be aware of it. You'll be aware of it when you look in the link. You'll be aware if you look at the you see it in the chat. It's in the doobly-doo as well. northernreaches.org. We have a website thanks to our GM Council where you can go. You can learn about the game. You can get information about the setting. You can get information about character rules and building. But one of the big things is you do have to be a member of our Patreon to be a member of this game. That means that there is a price, yes, of $10 a month minimum to join this game. So a couple of quick things. Number one, if you go to start playing, you are going to typically pay anywhere from $30 to $50 per session to play in a pay-for game GM. This will usually be maybe once a week, twice a month, but you're going to pay $30 to $50 per game. And the quality will be, some of the GMs are good, some of the GMs are not so good. For $10 a month, you can join Northern Reaches. This does a couple of things for us. One, and I'm not trying to be gatekeepy, but the fact is, when things are free, people value it accordingly, which is to say they don't. People act like assholes because what are you going to do? Kick me out? I didn't pay anything, right? People are like, oh, I can be a complete troll. Why? Because I'm completely anonymous. Because you're joining our Patreon and because you have to have a linked account, you aren't anonymous. If you start going off on some Nazi fascist rant, we know who you are. Number two, you're part of a community that you pay to be a part of with other people who pay to be a part of. So believe it or not, having that small amount of skin in the game has radically changed, not just Northern Reaches, but every aspect of our community gaming scene. Because Northern Reaches is our premier mega game, but we have many games that are running on our server. Not all of them are as complicated and in size and scope and scale as Northern Reaches. But the quality, I can promise you this. Look, I'm not going to sit there and say that every single player and every single GM that's a member of the Knights of Last Call community is the premier GM of the universe. But I can tell you that I've heard for the past 5 years, time and time again, wow, I am always impressed by the players and the GMs of this community. So for $10 a month, now I'm not going to say you're going to get to play every day, but there are people who literally play 2-3 times a week, every week for months at a time. So sometimes people literally are paying less than $1 a session to play. And again, not with some randos, but with it's a larger group, but it's a consistent group of dedicated, invested players. That alone is such a change that even if you're not really psyched about the mega game, like if you just want to play good quality RPGs, you should join just for that reason. So that's big. That's the biggest reason that this game might be a little bit different than other mega games or West Marches that you do. The second one, and this is what's really sets us apart. A lot of people have a sort of, look, it's your community, it's your game, you run it however you want. It's your game, you run it however you want. You've got your little fiefdom and you run your little stories, and you have your little fiefdom and you run your little stories, and you sort of have a central pool of characters. Very similar to the way that Pathfinder society works. But that's not the way Northern Reaches works. Northern Reaches is basically one gigantic campaign. There isn't, like, if you do something in an adventure, it might affect every player in the game. If you go and kill the dragon's dead. It doesn't respawn for the next person to run that adventure module. You're not going to get like 7 people, 7 groups all ran the same adventure module. I ran that society module. Oh, I ran that society module too. Oh, I ran that mod. Nope. It's one and done. Everything is living and persistent. So that means there's a lot of work that goes on, especially amongst our GMs and our council members, to keep that world living and breathing so that the actions that you take, we talk about player agency a lot on this channel, that the actions and the consequences of your actions carry through, not just to you, but to the community at large. And a lot of work has gone in over the years to make sure that feels fair and balanced, and it isn't overly rewarding or overly punitive as well. So those are 2 really big changes. But what it means is that you have this ability to really shape a living world. And that is a huge deal. Sarak in chat says, I learned something new about playing GMing or Foundry in 90% of the games that I played and GM'd in NR Season 3. Literally 350-ish hours of Pathfinder 2. Yeah, and I mean, it goes without saying, by the way, that I do stand by this. I think our community is probably the single greatest concentration of Pathfinder 2 knowledge and GMing that might exist anywhere. Because the people who run these games, I mean, we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of hours per season. Over the course of multiple seasons, you're talking about thousands of hours. It's a lot.
I just added up all of the hours played or GM'd, like the total hours from the community from last season. 13,118 hours were spent either playing or running games by all the players in the community, which is, every time I run that number, I forget what it is. And then I'm surprised when I see it that it's that large. That is so many hours dedicated to one campaign,
right?
That it blows my mind.
And that was last season.
Yeah, and that was like about 150-ish players and maybe about 50 GMs, I think, total, if I'm just remembering numbers off the top of my head.
Right. And I'm just saying, so, and, you know, and it was our biggest season, so I'll be clear of that, but we've had 3 seasons, you know, 3+ seasons before that. So, you know, a lot of these people who have been around for 2-3 seasons, you know, have put in, again, literally thousands of hours. It's absolutely insane. We had a tip from Edward as well. Says, just tip $10. I owe you for asking Evan those questions the other day, talking about Evan from Nimble. Never changed, Derek. It's neat to hear how this big mega game works. And to be clear, Edward, it works because of a lot of really, really dedicated volunteers and understanding players and GMs who are willing to understand that, look, this, you know, sometimes you get given lemons and you got to make lemonade. You know, sometimes there are awkward and strange things. You know, one of the fundamental things about RPGs is, you know, as a GM, you know, I can do whatever I want. You know, that's the power, right? Rule 0, I can make it up, you know. But obviously you are playing in a shared space. And, you know, you don't get that freedom to just do whatever you want. At the same time, I don't want it to be like Pathfinder Society, where, you know, everything that you do has to be in the book and there's no room for GM creativity. There's no room for, you know, creating new monsters or new ideas or new powers or new, you know, no, we want GMs to be able to flex those creative muscles. So how do you strike that balance? And that's where our GM council and the GMs work together to, you know, create this sort of harmonious experience. It's not, we don't always get it perfect, but we've gotten a lot better over the years. And, you know, sometimes some of those sources of friction end up being some of the most legendary sources of stories for years to come. And that's for sure. We've created a lot of cool stories. So Whoople, let's talk about the new setting. Because it is not Northport anymore. It is Frost Claim. And we've got some zones that are set up around that, and like maybe talk about what is the process of running a game. Is there a difference between zones? Like how does a GM interact with this space?
It may be worthwhile if you're able to pull up the zone or the world guide from the website, if you're open to that.
Yeah.
And we can talk through it. But I'll just say that, you know, certainly this season, one of the things that we tried to do with the zones was consider like the different play styles that players want and what we saw inside of season 3 and inside of, inside of the game that were being ran. You know, there's always a desire for some amount of town based sessions dealing with the politics or keeping the streets clean or the whatever seedy underbelly that happens to exist. And so, Frost Claim itself is one of the zones, which is the main, like, let's say settlement or town that is here in the frontier. But surrounding that, you know, we kind of have a very different blend of environments that all kind of, I don't know, how would I put it? They can cater to multiple types of sessions, and they are more of a setting than they are like a particular prescription on the type of games that you run. But they clearly have advantages for running, sessions that involve different categories or topics. Shatterspine Ridge is this really harsh mountain environment. And sorry if you're already sharing it. I'm not watching the video, but that's a little bit further down. Okay, yeah. So Shatterspine Ridge.
There we go.
is like a really harsh environment that's focused on kind of like survival in the elements, and it's dealing with, let's say, one of the primary challenges this season for Frostclaim, which is what is called the Pale. The Pale is this growing storm that kind of maybe will envelop the region over time, or was continuing to grow since its kind of inception and gotten worse. And so there's this threat of this growing storm that has cut off the primary rail artery to Frostclaim from Northport that travels through Shatterspine Ridge. And also, has kind of blocked like some of the magical communication and teleportation that might otherwise happen, which gives us, let's say, maybe our primary predicament going into season 4.
This is
that isn't to say that.
Right. It's not to say that there's other things, but also too, let's call it what it is, right? It's a way so that it's a good way for us to be able to say, this is why you can't just go home and get help from like a bunch of level 20 characters, right? Like that's what we're trying to go with here.
It's true. But it also, one of the things that we really wanted this season was to have, I don't know, in season 3, it started without any real like call to action. Maybe the best call to action we had was the rising undead in the reclaimed lands. But in general, what we found was that there was almost like this meandering at the start of the season before plots found their, like their legs to walk on their own. This is a real immediate threat that is, there to all of the characters, and something that they want to address and figure out. And it affects many of the zones, basically as the storm continues to grow. So it is a plot device to some degree, but it is also like, it's a real threat for people to try to deal with. So that's part of it. But Shatterspine Ridge is really focused on like exploration, understanding what's happening. And it's a good example of like survival in harsh climates. On the other hand, we have Windscar Bluffs, maybe farther on the opposite side, which isn't necessarily as impacted by the Pale as other regions, but it does have a bunch of disparate, colonies of different folks living up on the bluffs overlooking the Rheinveld Depths, which is the large Arctic sea, to the north. But that one's more focused on, the challenges of different cultures working together. There's also kind of some themes of, undead rising, the kind of being cut off from Northport means that things that they've grown accustomed to being supplied are no longer available. And so you have this growing unrest in the region as the balance is kind of shifted. So it's very maybe political minded zone for the people who really enjoy those type of like social encounters and conflicts.
And I think that this is, and I think that is like it's a really nice thing to do, not only for the GMs, but for the players. Which is, and we had talked about a little bit about this when we were originally talking about Dagger Reaches, right? And I was talking about my idea, and I was talking about like, this idea of theming zones beyond just a simple theming. And I love what you guys have done here, and I think it'll be a model for me, going forward with any new mega games I do, which is basically like saying, look, this isn't prescriptive. It's descriptive, but each of these zones has sort of a core theme that not only informs maybe the type of adventures that you should run here, but also gives the players a sense for the kind of play style that is maybe a little bit more appropriate to this area. And again, we could speak plainly here. The fact of the matter is you have some people who play Pathfinder 2, and when they sit down to play a 3-hour session, they want to have 3 or 4 knockout, drag out fights, right? Severe plus extreme encounters, right? Where they get to really flex their character build strength in combat. But we also have people who want to play Pathfinder 2, and they want to engage in a lot of role playing, and they want to make some skill checks, and they want to solve problems, and they want to explore dungeons or wilderness areas. They want to meet strange and unusual cultures or monsters. They want to learn lore about the game. Now, obviously, some people enjoy it all, but some people don't. And I think what this zone structure kind of does is it gives people a little bit of a carved out space to say, look, without me having to like be very explicit about what kind of adventure I'm running, if you come to the Windscar Bluffs, you might consider a focus on diplomacy and cultural exchange amongst the many cliffside communities where treaty agreements, old grudges, and shared survival shape fragile alliances, right? So, that's sort of a lot of the, I wouldn't even call it heavy lifting, but just a little bit of a push. And that is huge because it gives GMs also a source of inspiration to say, oh, I could take that and I know what kind of adventure I would run in that space. And everybody kind of gets to be on the same page. So I think this does a ton of page setting, which, quite frankly, Whoople, is one of the things that I think we've struggled with, over the last couple of years, is how do you get everybody on the same page about, hey, what are we doing on this adventure? Or what are we doing in this session? Or what's going on with this, predicament? And so I think that work that you guys did here for these different themed areas to kind of cover different styles or components of play without being too heavy-handed about it and saying, like, if you come to the Windscar Bluffs and you run a combat, we're going to come find you, right? No, it clearly is not that. And that's not to say that you would never be able to make a diplomacy check in, say, the Rheinfeld depths or whatever like that. But it is a style of game. And I think that that's really, really cool.
Yeah, and one thing I'll point to also to have reinforce this is the zone perks as well. Even as a player, there's unique perks that maybe help to again set that theme so you're aware of it. Like in Windscar Bluffs, there's these concept of maybe what those communities use to communicate because they're different cultures, they're different, they have different languages, etc. We have this concept of the rune stones. What are those things called? What are they? Thought stones.
Yes.
Yeah, so that they can, that gives you the ability to make diplomacy checks as a player, almost like the equivalent of, what's that perk called? Untrained improvisation, basically. You get that by default, for a small window of time, but it lets you participate no matter what, what your character was designed for in that session. And,
right.
In other zones, they might be more combat oriented or focused on, this helps you snag the big creature or things like that. So the zones do have these perks as a player that are active in the zone, as long as the GM says that it makes sense for the actual session itself, to help you, how would I put it, help reinforce that theming as well.
Well, as you say, it helps reinforce it, but also, quite frankly, it lets you participate. In the case of these thought stones, not only does it give you this essentially untrained improvisation for diplomacy, it also lets you speak that language. So, we can kind of reinforce that these are different cultures and different people, but instead of it being like, all right, well, the bard gets to do stuff, and I guess the rest of us have to sit back and do nothing. Sure, this is going to be a great zone where your bard who can speak all these different languages and, has all these different skill feats that are, based around, group actions or whatever it's called. What's it called?
I don't know, but all the diplomacy
group
skills,
influence or whatever. Yeah. But it also means that, hey, my fighter who is not trained in diplomacy, I get this bonus, and that means that I can still participate. And I can still be a part of it, and so that's really, really cool. But you can also see here, this is just an example of the kind of help and advice. And this is just this is what we have on the website. But, you've got things like, what are the kind of creatures that might be here? Is this the only creatures that exist here? No, but as a GM, it gives you sort of guidance, ideas, and lets us sort of build ties together. Same thing with the type of terrain that you might see as well. So all great, this is great information for players, but it's also great information for GMs as well. And this is the world guide. There's also a GM guide as well. Now, that's actually kind of a nice dovetail into a sort of a separate idea or a separate thing, which is one of the things early on that I discovered running Northern Reaches was that for all the time that Whoople talked about, in the games, 13,000 hours, times 10 that for the amount of time that people spend in the Discord. Mm-hmm. Right. Because, you're only playing in a session, maybe 3, 4, 8 hours a week, maybe. But we have people who are on the Discord every single day. And as years have gone by, we have begun to reinforce that. And we have not only begun to reinforce that in terms of gameplay elements, but we've also reinforced that in terms of role-playing elements, with a lot of people doing the majority of the playing of their character offline, so to speak, through Discord chats. And this kind of grew last year with the introduction from our council with venues, things like the quest board. So Whoople, I think you should really talk about that, because I think that's where a lot of we start to get in sort of the KOLC tech, right? Like the stuff that you guys have created that isn't, say, part of Pathfinder 2. It what makes this not just a PF2 campaign, but something unique, something truly special with its own set of rules.
Yeah, so on the website, if you go to the venues section, that's probably an interesting place to like maybe put on the screen, and you can scroll down a bit.
Yep.
But I'll talk a bit about what we are doing in general. So, there's obviously sessions that happen during the, where people participate and they go on adventures, and that's what they're doing inside of these zones. And there's a lot of fun there, and a lot of storytelling that happens inside of those sessions, right? That's where probably the majority of the movement happens from a let's say a storytelling perspective. But in between that, there's always the question of like, well, when you play a regular Pathfinder campaign, how do I get new gear? How do I, retrain? How do I, participate or gather rumors and things like that? And so we wanted to make sure that there was a comprehensive, let's say, downtime system in general for the campaign. But beyond that, what we wanted to do was actually add avenues for play from players who don't even participate in sessions, right? Who build characters designed entirely for, I want to be the crafter. I want to be the person that makes all of the weapons in town, things like that. And so we tried to design a system broadly that covers kind of all of those niches, right? We have, the venue system, which lets people build let's just say venues, we'll call them that, but like businesses basically that are themed around certain things. Like maybe you want to be the Adventurers Guild that helps to influence some of the actions that happen in the Shatterspine Ridge to help resolve the kind of threat of the Pale. And you have, you're hiring mercenaries out to do that. That's great. That's a role you could do in town. And there you have ways to influence how the sessions play out and how that affects clocks, which is our way of, we're borrowing it from, I guess, Blades in the Dark, but
right.
Our mechanism for driving storytelling en masse, right? Multiple sessions can impact clocks, but there's venues that focus on the way they interact with clocks, that interact with trying to drive a narrative. There's venues that maybe serve as clinics for people who get wounded or diseased or cursed during their sessions. There's venues themed around being great craftsmen, things like there's different passives that make it cheaper to craft or make it easier to craft, or maybe when you craft, you make unique masterwork items that are one of a kind. That is unique for that player that you created the item for. And so we have lots of different ways for you to build kind of this venue system and interact with players without going to a single session. And we saw some people in season 3 that actually participated in just that way.
Right.
There's a bit of, if there's kind of generally, I would say we've tried to capture that if you have an idea for what you want to do in town, there's some representation of that in the venue system while still being balanced and grounded. Like you want to be a tavern keeper, great. You want to be an item shop, great. You can do that and participate.
Yeah. Force Psych in chat says not Northern Reaches, but Dragontide, which is another one of our mega games, said, I earned the most prestige, which was sort of like a victory point mechanic. I earned the most prestige without ever playing in a single session. Discord non-session play is no joke. So for, this is just an example of like us trying to figure out ways so that you can engage and play at your level of involvement and engagement. We kind of talked about this earlier. We danced around it, but like one of the big things that might surprise you is that, when you go adventure and you earn experience points, those experience points aren't used for leveling up. We decided that I don't want you to feel like you are priced out of the campaign just because you didn't get to play for a month. If you've ever played an MMO, and you got a bunch of friends and you're like, oh, we're all going to play World of Warcraft together, and everybody's playing and it's fun. And then, you get busy for a few weeks and you're like, cool guys, I'll come join you. And everyone goes, oh, we're sorry, buddy. We're 15 levels higher than you now. You can't play with us anymore. That is a real bummer. And, Pathfinder 2nd edition has a lot of strengths, but one of the strengths that is a weakness is that it's really tough to play with people who are very different levels than you. The game, the math of the game doesn't work that way. So in our game, you level up automatically. I'm trying to find the table. I think it's somewhere here.
I don't think we have the table right now. I think we
not?
have to go add that in. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you just go to like the homepage, it talks about, the fact it's automatic level progression at the very least.
So basically, you are playing because you want to get perks and fun little bonuses. It's not like you don't have to pay, you don't have to play in order to maintain your level. Now, granted, playing the game is fun. We do give you these perks for having your XP. You can unlock certain cool little bonuses for your character. They aren't like game breaking or super powerful, although some could be very rewarding. But it's not like, oh, I have XP perk, I get plus 20 to attack. It's nothing like that. But we try to keep everybody on the same level, which is why we use things like the automatic rune progression rules. A lot of people have used that in Pathfinder 2nd edition, where you don't have to sweat getting the right striking rune, getting the right potency rune, getting the right resiliency rune. You're going to have the basic minimum stuff that you need in order for your character to function. And so it's also, maybe even a bigger problem or a bigger perk is it also great if you're a GM, because you could look at the schedule and you could go, I know that all 80 players in this campaign are going to be level 9, right? During the month of August or whatever. So I am working on a cool adventure idea. I'm going to start running it in August. Cool. I'm going to make it for level 9 because I know everyone's going to be level 9. You don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to make it for this group or that group. It also means, because again, we've learned from the mistakes that we've made in the past. We used to have in the older days, a GM would be like, hey, I had a couple people drop out. I have a couple open seats. Does anybody want to join the adventure? And you get a bunch of people who go, I'm literally at home. I'm doing nothing. I love Pathfinder 2. I want to play, but my character's only level 3, man. My character's only level 5. And it's like, yeah, that sucks. That sucks to tell people. Now, if we had 1,000 players, we could probably get away with that. But we don't. I like that our group is big enough to feel big, but still small enough that you could legitimately play with, everybody in the campaign. But, we don't have so many people that I'm in a situation where I could tell people to go get fucked. No, if people want to play, I want them to be able to play. If you are available to play, I want you to be able to play. And so even though I thought people would like riot against this idea, it turned out to be remarkably popular. In fact, the number one complaint from Southern Beaches, where you leveled up once a week, was it's way too fast. And so that has been slowed down. What did we decide on a final pace? Is it 2 or 3?
Yeah, every 3 weeks. Yeah.
So every 3 weeks you level up. And so you might get busy and step away. Maybe you just do some venue stuff. Doesn't matter. When you come back, you'll be the right level to be able to play with your friends. And that's really, really cool. So I hear that one starts with bonus archetype. Is that different than free archetype? Yes, but that's a mistake I make, but there's a reason for that. But yes.
I mean, I can explain like what bonus archetype is and why it's different, I guess.
Yes,
I mean, the quick answer
Mike
for
was
it
asking
is
about it, so sure.
Yeah, in free archetype, you end up with a whole track of, you can choose feats for anything you want, but you're beholden to this concept of you can only have one archetype that you're, let's say, escaping at a time. You have to spend 2 feats in an archetype to be able to exit an archetype and be able to pick a different archetype. Otherwise, you're kind of stuck to it. So you can't just take every archetype you want. Bonus archetype, the benefit from a design perspective is that you can take a bonus archetype immediately and take an archetype on your main track if you wanted to, on your main class feats. So you have the free archetype track where you can select feats, but the downside is they're all dedicated to one archetype. And The idea behind that is that we really want to like reinforce, like, rather than, I don't know, how would I put it? You mathematically building the ultimate character
Yep.
that is 7 archetypes, that is like the best thing that you could mathematically achieve. We would rather you say, I'm a cavalier and I'm a warrior, or a barbarian type of deal.
Right.
So you're picking, like, you have your main track where you can do a little bit, and then you have one archetype track where you are committing to an identity. So it's not just, how would I put it? The most power gamey move.
It's not just
something that
min-max
is
car op path builder bullshit. Because
exactly.
like, let's say I'm a fighter, right? If I'm a fighter, and my GM, and let's say that's my main class, fighter, and I'm only going to use those class feats for fighter, and the GM says we're using the free archetype rule, I could take champion dedication, then pick up a couple champion feats that I want, then take rogue dedication, and then take a couple rogue feats, then take sorcerer dedication and pick up a couple sorcerer, and I could do all of that within the free archetype. So the free archetype doesn't really have any sort of like fictional weight. It doesn't really tell us anything about our character. The way bonus archetype works, especially since in sometimes in the course of the game's history, the bonus archetype has been specific to even sometimes a class. Like, this will award you with bonus archetype druid. It basically says this archetype, this bonus archetype, is not just for whatever you want it to be for, it's for druid. And so the idea of bonus archetype is it's a little bit more restrictive, just to sort of make it so that it's not quite so powerful and broken, basically.
Yeah, and one of the perks that we mentioned, like the XP perks that you can purchase, is actually a second archetype. But again, it's locked to a second specific archetype again. And that's the type of thing that we can do when it's not just free archetype and it's not open field to create a bunch of feats. Is it's like, hey, pick a second really interesting archetype for your character, and you can use that as well. So
Yeah,
it does let us explore a perk space of adding a second track that's not just, now you have 3 feats and you could change archetype every level because of all the feats that you have.
Right, and as sort of as a so it's free archetype, but don't be a path builder maniac. Correct, Sweet Threat. That is the right way to say it. I mean, if you read the 3 archetype rules, they talk about like, oh, maybe your GM will say, hey, we're using free archetype, but in this campaign, because we're at Hogwarts, like everybody has to use it for either witch or wizard, or warlock or whatever. And people do that all the time, So yes, it's basically taking that but making it mandatory, because remember, we have a bunch of GMs, so we don't want a bunch of people all making independent decisions. We kind of want to try to set the same ground rules for everybody. With that in mind as well, if your character dies, you can be resurrected. You can use your XP that you've earned as sort of you basically, it's a way of saying, if you've been playing the game for a while, you've probably earned experience points. So if your character dies, you can come back. But it's kind of as a reward to say, like, if you put a lot of time and effort into your character, you could spend your XP to come back. But we, in the past of the Northern Reaches, we used to have like 3 lives and you're out, 3 strikes and you're out. Your character was, was kind of this old school, like we wanted characters to be, to be dying and turning over. Now we, kind of in a more modernist approach, we sort of leave it up to you. Like, do you want to spend that XP on keeping your character around, or do you want to, because remember, it's Pathfinder 2, so if your character dies and you make a new character, you're not fucked. Like, you're going to start at the same level as your old character, you might lose out on some cool little perks, but you could keep your XP. Your XP doesn't follow your character. It follows, your player account. So really, it's more of a personal choice, a stylistic choice. Do you think that, are you cool with your character meeting their end, in the depths of the Rhymefell deep? Yes. Okay, cool. Make a new character. Maybe you just been jonesing to make a new character anyways. Take the loss. Maybe people will sing songs about your character, and then save the XP and get new use them for something else. Sarak says power perks are meh. Character option perks are fun, but Talk of the Town and Heroes Legacies are the real rewards for narrative BS.
Yeah, it might be worth, if we aren't sharing it, it might be worth going to the XP perks and talking through some of the specifics there.
Okay.
But what I'll say is, we try to design perks for kind of all categories, and there's actually 2 major categories for perks. There's the town life perks, which are focused around what you do during downtime for those people who are playing, ad hoc inside of the Discord. And then there's the character perks that are more focused on like session power or things like that. The two perks that Sarok mentioned, Talk of the Town, that's the like capstone perk
That's the
of
ultimate,
the town life.
You can see you need, by the way, you need 20,000 plus. So you have to have spent at least 20,000 XP on town life stuff.
Exactly. You have to have spent a lot. And then even then we're going to impose like basically you work with the council to say, this is the type of change I want to see in the world. This is the type of story I want to have told about my character. And then we maybe give you extra requirements too, right? So it might be beyond that, but it's a really fun way for you to impact the world beyond. And in fact, some of the, like if you look at the player's guide, there's mentions of, how would I put it? Changes to deities. There's changes to like town actions. There's changes to unlocked classes. A lot of that was done through Hero's Legacy or Talk of the Town. So they're really fun ways to either permanently impact the world or impact the world for a short period of time, but do so in a more dramatic fashion. It's kind of there's almost this weight of if you want to change things really significantly for the rest of the season, it may not have a long lasting effect, but it lets you kind of choose the type of interactions and work with the council on, some type of outcome that makes sense based on your actions to date and the contributions of others to those. But there's also perks, like if I go to like the character unlocks, there's one that's I think is really fun. It's quite expensive, but it's what we call advanced archetype. And the idea there is that you can take a multi-class archetype, and instead of it being half level for determining what feats you're eligible for with the advanced feats. So like typically if you choose a multi-class archetype of barbarian, you would be limited to half character level. Yeah, for advanced feats. And instead, we do PL -2 for that. So there's some really fun, maybe design interactions there, especially as you get higher up in level. That could be a really fun space for like the min-maxers of the world to do something or make something unique.
We call them character builders nowadays. We don't want to. Yeah. We don't want to judge.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Character builder. I'm in this category too. So I'm not saying that disparagingly. Just to be clear. Like this is a way for them to have something unique that they can do that isn't too powerful. Last season we allowed dual class, which is maybe a step too far, right? It was in the original advanced player's guide, but this is a way to say, hey, let's do something really interesting, unique, but isn't game breaking math wise.
Right. And I should also point out that this type of stuff is also why we run things as seasons, right? Because you are going to be able to in a few short months, take a character from level 6 all the way up into the teens, and we can play with the space a little bit. We can make your, you might now. Granted, too, a lot of these things require enough XP that by the time you get this, it's not going to be week 1 of the campaign. And yeah, sometimes maybe through some weird combination of things, maybe your character is a little out of pocket and a little bit but that's okay, because you know what? Unless it's truly game-breakingly broken, the season will end, right? Everyone will remember that crazy character that you had. You were able to sort of do more, and not because you picked a feat, but because you used your experience points. You went on these adventures. You role-played. You did all the things. You engaged with the game. And you had this really awesome character. And then guess what? Instead of that being like, well, this is a major problem, it's going to ruin the campaign for the next year or two. Well, no, because by the end of the season, by the end of the year, we're going to be wrapping up season 4. And that character story will come to an end, And it's also fun for GMs, they get to cut loose a little bit because, they know that by the end of the season, for those players who really want to build a character and kind of push the limits a little bit, yeah, they can kind of cut loose themselves and have some pretty tough, nasty encounters with some custom monsters or custom mechanics. A lot of GMs sort of, take that sort of challenge-based approach and really throw down the gauntlet. But again, at the same time, we also have people who literally will go an entire session with no combat. So there's sort of a vast spectrum. And then, as Whoopa was mentioning, some people don't even play the damn game. They just do stuff in Discord. They role play in character, in chat. They run their venue, their little apothecary shop, or they run their whatever, their little newspaper, and that's fun for them. They get to play that way, and our game tries to reward you to do that.
Yeah, when it comes to the in-town play last season, one thing we do is we do reward what we call like RPXP. It can only be used to purchase town life perks, but you get that from taking actions in town, from doing certain actions, but you also get it from just chatting in character. So a lot of people engaged, just told stories and participated and shared their kind of character story and background, or fleshed out their character story and background if they also played in sessions in town, and they're rewarded for it as far as impact in town, not necessarily for impact for their character as much, but that's one real fun part of it. So I mean, there's certainly options from an in town perspective to make and again, there's the talk of the town piece, which has pretty long. How would I put it? Long-lasting implications, right? Like there was Shoefix, who has joined us in chat a few times. His venue was designed to basically be like, how would I put it? Alms for the poor. He was giving out free meals. It was like almost like a soup kitchen to some degree, where he was giving out free meals, etc. And that was his character's design from the beginning. And his talk of the town, like his legacy that he left, was that basically anyone can have a free bonus on any check in sessions or in town to get a +2 whenever they, like once a week. And that was kind of a reflection of the fact that he was giving out, meals to all the people.
Hey, Darth is finally going to be able to join us, so I'm going to have to reset the windows a little bit. But welcome, Darth. I'm glad everything's okay over there. Uh-oh, we can't hear you if you're talking. And I will start working on these windows. Zoom, you gotta love Zoom. Just to make sure, Whipple, I can still hear you, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
Hopefully so.
All right. Also, too, in chat, if anybody has any questions about maybe some, sneak previews or decisions, or why, other certain decisions were made, please feel free to do that. I'm also happy to talk about mega games, design and philosophy in general, as well. About like what it is that we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it that way. Because this is the crew with the most experience that we have. Especially Darth, who's been running this since season 1, although apparently not with his mic set up. Just kidding.
Yeah, one thing that I can talk to you real quick is that you mentioned like the power level, the power curve in previous seasons. I will say that has been a topic for us on the council for season 4. We want to make sure that from a power gaming perspective, that people aren't able to get so far ahead of the curve that there's breaking math, etc. And well, I wouldn't say that was necessarily the case in season 3. Some people get close to it, right? There are certain items that were pretty crazy, and there's certain because we do allow people to make custom items. That's one of the fun things that you could do as a GM, is contribute to this campaign. There's an approval process with the council, but if you want to make a cool custom item to celebrate your raid, let's do that. But when you add it all together, towards the end of the season, things start to get, more and more mathematically away from base Pathfinder.
Yes.
A few things that we've done this season. One, the total power you can get from perks, a lot lower, because we want it to, be more grounded in base Pathfinder math. 2, we've added what we call like an epic slot system, where if you get a epic item, you can only have one of those by default equipped in a session at any given time. GMs can change that number and can allow more for certain sessions where it makes sense. Maybe for the big raid, you want to let people again cut loose and bring all of their crazy gear to it. But otherwise, you can only invest one of these things at a time as the default.
It's like it's kind of like an Apex item in that way.
Exactly. Yeah. So you get.
Yeah, we can. Hear you now.
Yes, we can hear you, Darth.
Okay. Sorry, I had to use the backup mic. Don't know why it was working on Zoom first, but. Sorry about that. You can keep going.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, but a big part of what we wanted to do, this season is pare back that total power creep, limit it in some capacity. Look at epic items and say, hey, these are really fun, and we want everyone to basically be able to get one. But also to make, to acknowledge that when you start adding 10 epic items together on one character sheet,
Right.
things get a little wild.
You know, especially because a lot of times those items aren't being designed. I mean, they can get out of pocket anyways, but a lot of times, you know, in your own personal campaign, you know, the person who's giving all these crazy out of pocket items is the same GM. So they have some idea of what existing capacities a character might already have. But you might get some crazy item from some GM, and then you get another crazy item from a completely different GM who never dreamed or thought about the way that those things might interact. And you can start getting some pretty, you know, crazy and out of pocket abilities. But as Whoopa was saying, that's the default. The default is that you have one attunement slot for that. So if you want to, you know, if you're GM and you're like, oh, you know, you guys are going to the glacial ice core, you know, to fight the frost god or whatever. Yeah, you guys have 3 slots or 5 slots, you know, or whatever like that things could be as well.
Yeah, I see Jedi in chat just mentioned the elemental hearts, and like that's an example of what would be an epic item this season. So certainly putting limits on how much or what you can attune at once or, you know, on the average session. But again, letting GMs make that decision. If they want to invite more power to their games, then they have the flexibility to do so.
Yeah, and the GM guide even has like a little legend to kind of show you like what roughly it means when you let 2 epic slots versus you let 0 epic slots, or if you let, you can technically go unlimited. I know I'm going to do that, but
Of course you are.
If you want to go lower, it kind of gives you the benchmark of what, when we're approving items, what that actually means and where you're sitting at. So you can kind of compare it to, like, if you're running your own home game and what that power level actually means. So
we have a couple questions. So C Cav said, when folks take a venue action, the cost of the action goes to the town, aka does it vanish into the ether, or do you and then you as the venue owner get the reward listed in the passive section?
Yes. So basically, it's kind of like presumed that cost is covering the expense of whatever's being done. But you as a venue owner have 2 options. One, you get bonuses based on the passive section, but you also can charge fees for your venue if you want to. I mean, obviously, it's dictated by the competition around town. And maybe if you have a really aggressive fee structure, someone might come in and undercut your business. But, you know, if you wanted to say, hey, to use this service, you also need to pay me 100 gold. You can do that. You have every right to do that as the venue owner, to decide who uses those services, et cetera. So you can charge additional fees, which are built into the action economy when they visit you, and they can pay you on top of that. That's something that we changed this season to allow people to basically just give gold or resources as part of a venue visit. But otherwise, the rest of the fee listed in those actions goes to the ether, basically.
Right. Cost of doing business, COGS, right? Cost of goods sold.
Yeah.
Sweet Threat wants to know, what was the thought process behind starting at level 6?
Yeah, so 2 things there to kind of put together here. So one, we actually did a survey of all, technically, actually, there's someone who never played NR before at all, but it was to any past or future NR players from season 1, season 2, season 3, and SOBI. And we basically put a question to see what level ranges they actually enjoyed and what they would actually like more. So we had like 1 to 6, 6 to 13, I think, and then 14 to 20. So one of the things is that's based on our results from our survey. That's one of the sweet spots that people were looking for. But then second, we also used our own sort of judgment looking at it, and the reason we kind of wanted to start with 6 is you have enough feats to sort of play with, and you can, especially with the bonus archetype you get a few feats to play around with. It's specifically at when you get your 3rd feat. So everyone's going to be able to feel a lot different, and you should see a lot of uniqueness, even though there might be like, I don't know, 100 people running around with some alt characters and everything like that. Hopefully you're not duplicating characters and stuff.
That's a great reason, you know, because again, if you're playing your home Pathfinder 2 game and you've got 4 PCs, and you're the only fighter, you know, and you're level 1 and you're like, oh, I have sudden charge, you know, you're like, cool, I have sudden charge. No one else has sudden charge. Okay, well, if there's 10 fighters or, you know, 12, 13 fighters in your game of Northern Reaches, and, you know, a lot of them have sudden charge or dual slice or whatever, you know, it could make it feel like, oh, we're all kind of the same, you know, it can be kind of samey. So, you know, obviously with more choices, more options comes more things. The other thing too is, you know, like, you know, level 5, people get, their first bump of proficiency. You're only one level away from your spellcasters getting their bump at level 7. So I just think it's like you have a little bit more math and a little bit more room to play with, rather than being kind of compressed down at the beginning of the game. I think characters could be a little unnaturally fragile in Pathfinder 2 at like level 1 and 2. And also, quite frankly, these people are Pathfinder 2 vets. They've played a lot of level 1 and 2 and 3. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they're kind of sick of it. They're kind of bored of it.
Well, the other thing to consider is just that we have a limited window that we're playing in. If we're doing 3 weeks per level, right?
True.
That's a long commitment of time. And so we have to pick a range that we think is most enjoyable to play in. There's a point, Pathfinder math is tight. I mean, memes aside, but the Pathfinder math is good up at level 20. But it's still less good than maybe at the lower levels. And then, early on, there's still more risk, or there's, less uniqueness or less fun to be had. So people, if they have a limited window and we're doing 3 weeks per level, I think, what is it? What are we doing? 6 through 13 is like a really prime range where you have a character that is interesting, unique, to yourself. You can actually kind of define what you're doing. And then at the high end, you're not escaping the bounds of like maths to some degree where,
Right.
It's not even logical.
We don't have to have a whole we don't have to have a whole section of side rules about whether or not disappearance, works or is allowed, right?
Don't worry.
And
Pathfinder
also-
recently changed those rules around
did they?
disappearance. Yeah, in the last errata.
Oh, what do they say now?
It's almost more confusing, but I think it's that if you have an imprecise sense that's not vision, you can still detect. I gotta remember, but I'm pretty sure if you have an
something like
imprecise
that,
sense, imprecise senses work, precise senses don't, but precise senses don't get degraded to imprecise. It's just like they just stop working. So anything that you have as imprecise still can work to find them, but anything that's precise no longer can locate the target.
Got it.
Anyways, very interesting.
So yeah.
Yeah, the only other point I want to...
Please, Darth, yeah.
The only other point I wanted to add is with the level range we had, Will kind of mentioned it too, like level 13-ish is when you start to get like, not just disappearance and all those super strong spells, but like if you're running a dungeon or anything like that, that's when you start to really hit the high level spells where, you kind of have to make the environment be able to handle those pieces if you still want to do like dungeon delving or hexploration and that sort of thing. And although a lot of that stuff is uncommon, especially since you can get a lot of the uncommon spells and stuff in this with venues, it's a really good range where you're kind of sort of doing the same stuff at the beginning as you are at the end, and you don't have to make too many adjustments to sort of
Right, a game that needs to support like, oh, we're going to kill rats and oh, we're going to kill gods is a very different game than sort of like, yeah, we're kind of in that sweet spot where like, yeah, you're fighting ogres and trolls and then you're kind of fighting like giants. Like it's all still kind of, tonally correct as well. So Dr. D. Hart, this is just sort of a generic question, which we could expand here. I just received my Elemental Storm book from some publisher called Roll for Combat. Will I be able to use it? So
let's see what Elemental Storm is.
It's a bestiary.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the answer for those are, we certainly are open to allowing like creatures from the bestiaries, even from battles. Like we actually have other Battle Zoo bestiaries
we have other
enabled on the servers.
Yeah.
So,
so we try to make an effort to buy and purchase and empower our GMs to have whatever resources they need to be able to use it. So in the case of something like Battle Zoo Bestiary, where there actually is a Foundry and Compendium and module, we have that enabled and bought. So yes, you can definitely use that. I should also add at this point, as a side note, so we run all these games on Foundry. Knights of Last Call is the single largest owner of Foundry licenses in the world. And I confirm that with the owner of the company at PAX. We also are the only group, as far as I know, that has an enterprise level solution with the Forge. So the Forge is a online hosting platform that hosts our Foundry instances. What this means is that you don't have to set up an instance. You don't have to own your own instance of Foundry. And you don't have to set it up and run it locally on your machine, or you don't have to go out and set up your own AWS instance. Instead, you have the permission and the freedom to use our resource, which also has a bunch of premium, maps and premium tokens and premium modules all installed on it for your use. So, we try to make it as basically free to play for you as possible, to give you as much resources as I can provide you. Even though it costs us potentially hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month, we try to make that available to you so that everybody can play that stuff when Forge works.
I just got a message. They're saying that the chat scroll on the stream isn't working.
Oh, it
just
died?
as an
Okay.
FYI.
Okay. Sometimes YouTube can crash.
Yeah. Well, Derek's fixing that. Apparently, Sark actually wrote 2 of the monsters. I think Roll for Combat still does their Battle Zoo roll RPG Superstar. So I guess he got 2 monsters in there.
Yeah, now it is legally distinct. It is legally distinct. It is now called like the Monster Contest or something.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, you got legally distinct Pokemon. You got to have legally distinct RPG Superstar too, I guess.
Yeah. Why the chat is definitely not working.
Yeah. While you're fixing that too, we can also. I'm not sure if you guys had talked about like some of the changes to Talk of the Town and Heroes Legacy yet, Whipple, but.
No, you could speak to anything that as far as distinction there.
Yeah. So one cool thing we kind of did as we're sort of talking about sort of this Eldamon and Elemental Storm and whether those things are in here or not, is we heard a lot of feedback from how Heroes Legacy and Talk the Town worked. And for those of you who don't know, they're basically these long stretch goals of what you can do in the game. So Talk the Town was supposed to be, if you had a venue and you wanted it to have a lasting impact towards the rest of the season and sort of a custom benefit to there. Like for example, we talked about Shu's venue there. He was able to give people an extra hero point or something there for free, and they were able to get that without using actions. And then there's what's called Heroes Legacy, which is almost like your own story and how important you are. So for example, we have a new demigod because Reaper basically went through and hunted down a bunch of huge godlike beings and became a demigod for that. And so I think it was absorbing their souls or something there. Cool like that. But we also have a third option now. So this is if you want like I keep calling it Thor's hammer when we were talking about it. It's technically Mjolnir, but if you want like the legendary weapon, if you want to be defined by your flame tongue or your Mjolnir, we have what's called the Forge Epic Item perk now. So it's like I said, it's if you want like a vestment or your weapon to be your legacy, like you're not Ragnar holding the flame tongue. You are the wielder of the flame tongue. It kind of gives you that option to sort of weave that into the story and have lasting impacts because of that. And you also get to actually customize the ability because one thing you might pick up the flame tongue, you're like, I kind of want this to be in the actual maul instead of a sword.
Long sword or whatever.
Yeah. Now you get that. So there's a lot of like extra guidance on how it works and everything like that we did tweak as well. But I think that's one of the big things that we're trying to hit like all the bases. If you want to have a big impact on town, if you want your story to be told, or if you want your legendary weapon to be like the thing, to be the new flame tongue, you kind of have all those options now.
Yeah, because I mean, people play role-playing games for different reasons, and there's been a lot of ink spilled on blogs over the years and YouTube videos about like identifying what your 4 players want out of an RPG. Okay, well now make it 80, or make it 100 players, right? Like, so how do you can't make a mega game and also make it super niche and super distinct. Everybody comes to these games and plays these games for a different reason, and especially a game like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is fairly generic. Like if somebody were to join, say the One Ring mega game, and they're like, I absolutely hate Tolkien, I think Lord of the Rings is stupid. It's like, okay, well, there's only so much we can do. You know, they're like, I'm so pro Shadow. I definitely want Sauron to win, right? It's like, okay, now we have a problem. But, you know, with a game like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you know, you could basically build any kind of character you could possibly imagine. And so, you know, they've done a lot of work to try to allow those different play styles and those different growth options, you know, to sort of be a thing.
Yeah, one thing, and this may be a good point to pivot and talk about GM perks. But you know,
Sure.
in pursuit of what Darth was saying, one of the new GM perks that we're allowing is a thing called epic resources. You know, there's always this concept of resources, which are like furs or minerals or, you know, the kind of fancy stuff that you get that makes it easier to craft certain types of materials. But epic resources are a consumable GM perk, which this is a whole distinction for this season that we can talk to in just a moment. But the main idea behind it is that, like, you just killed the Balrog or whatever it is, you know, some big scary creature that you know, and took its hide, or you took its egg, or you took its, you know, pick whatever fancy material from you know, some type of horrible creature, or maybe even just some ancient totem that you found in a ruin. Those now have weight and can carry that weight between sessions, where it either makes it cheaper for a GM to make a custom item in the future for you, or it makes it easier for you, or reduce the cost of that forge epic item perk that Darth was talking about. So if you collect some of these resources,
Basically,
yeah, go ahead.
DKP.
It's DKP, but yeah, it's these things that you basically, you get these, like, you know, you could take these items and then add them together, and now, you know, you can forge this really cool epic item out of those three things that your adventurer, your character participated in and did that. I beat this guy. I got the, I don't know, whatever, the precious metal from the top of the mountain. I got the hand wrap, you know, I made out of the leather of this dragon, and put it together and make the item of your dreams. That's the intention. And you work with the GM Council on that. You know, if you buy that perk, you say, hey, this is the type of thing I want to make. These are the items I have. We say, hey, it costs a little bit more than the base price because of this, and you need to go do this quest to complete that. We work with the players to kind of dictate a path for them to accomplish whatever that goal or dream that they have for their character is. So definitely excited about that perk in general, and what it means. But if we just talk about,
yeah, I was going to say, generally
Go ahead.
speaking, the council and the GMs, right? You know, but the council, I mean, they are there to let you have your fun, but they also understand, and unfortunately, it is the case that for some people, you know, having fun means, you know, shitting on everything and shitting on everyone. So that's the only type of fun that we're really worried about, you know, getting out of control and getting out of pocket. You know, I don't even necessarily mean that maliciously, right? Like, some people aren't like, oh, I want to be powerful and everybody else has to be weak. No, they're just like, I just want to make sure that I'm way more powerful than the rest of you. And when you're playing in a large scale, massive game, some of those things have to be controlled. And that's why the GM Council gets involved, and that's why they might set standards, or they might turn back an idea. It's no different than if you're playing with your own home GM, and, you know, maybe you've built a character that is legal, but is just making everybody else have a bad time. And I would hope that your GM might go and talk to you about it, you know, instead of just telling the other 3 or 4 players in the group, you guys need to get good, you know, like you're dead weight, and you're
Depends on the GM style, I guess.
We
I feel
did
like
have
the Guy Guys probably would have said that.
yeah,
so.
Guy Gax probably get good. We did have a $5 tip come in. I think it's from Mike T. Says, shameless plug, come join us some nights to test your builds in PBX. So PBX is sort of a spin-off that, because again, we run these things during, and by the way, some of the seasonality is also based in just around scheduling. Turns out people get really busy, you know, in the holidays, and you know, during the sort of the beginning of the year. So usually our seasons, we have found, work a lot better when they run between, say, April, May to, say, you know, September, October. And so that is where that, you know, is, you know, that's where that range comes from. But some people are not satisfied with that. And so what started as a spin-off game was, some people were like, hey, I want to get ready for next season's Northern Reaches. I want to test out some ideas and some, you know, some arenas, some combat situations. And a bunch of people created this sort of side game called PBX, which is Path Builder Extreme, which is basically a play on the Path Builder app, where you just go and make character builds and then fight them against ridiculously extreme fights just to see how well your character, or to make some completely stupid, dumb build and just to see if it could even live. But that is what that was my concern. And again, that's not even related to Northern Reaches. It's just another thing that is available as part of your Knights of the Last Call Patreon membership. Let's see here. If there's any other questions. Again, it's possible you asked a question. I missed it because my chat was dead there for a minute. So potentially maybe re-ask again. Let's see.
Well, I'm not sure if you guys
yeah, please.
Like, I know we talked a lot about like the mechanics and everything and the rules and stuff like that. I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to talk about like just generally what we mean by narrative first in NR and how different that could be from, a lot of the different things, like especially like Pathfinder Society and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that we covered, is that just like talking about how it's not just, go run the same adventure that 25 other people ran. And, it's really about changing and updating the world. At the end of the day, that's really what this is. It's an opportunity to do a collaborative campaign building through or world building. It's like the world's longest game of Microscope. But you're like doing it through the mechanical lens of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but you're doing it on a large scale over the course of 6 months with 80 plus people. And you're all shaping and changing the narrative in your own ways by taking your character's efforts, whether it's in a session or out of session, say in Discord or at your venue, and you're putting your character's efforts and achievements towards pushing the game in one direction versus another direction. At the same time, sometimes characters fall short. Sometimes characters fail. Sometimes clocks that, don't get solved in time. And sometimes the world changes not for the better. New threats arise. And this isn't something that we plan out. This isn't following some sort of scripted guideline. The GM Council is very much reacting, and the GMs are sort of reacting to the world. One of the things that we really encourage GMs to do is don't just get into your lane to tell your story. Take a step back, realize that, if you want to run your own campaign of Pathfinder 2, you are welcome to it. I will make all of those resources that I was talking about before available to you, and you are free to run your own personal campaign. In fact, I encourage you to do it. But this is about taking a step back and saying, what's going on over here? What happened in Darth's session? Oh, Whoople and his group just had this incredible failure in their session. I want to take that. I want to run with that. I want to spin on that. I want to make what my idea was different because of what happened in these other game sessions. That's when the game really hums, is when the GMs are each incorporating and weaving in these threads from all of these other areas and elements. And it's a challenge, I would even say, to a GM to say, hey, look, this is a great way for you as a GM, especially as a Pathfinder 2 GM. Maybe you're only used to running adventure paths. This is a great way in a very safe and welcoming space where most of the players are also GMs. So this is a group of peers who get it. But it's also a way for you to say, okay, let me try my hand at some explorative game development and creating something and responding to the actions of an evolving and dynamic world instead of just laying out the next breadcrumb in the adventure path. So it could be a really rewarding and growing experience for GMs. And outside of giving you rewards and trying to incentivize you, look, it's easier to play than a GM, and our GMs are definitely doing the Lord's work by running the games. Without them, it doesn't work. It's not World of Warcraft, where everybody's a player, and the rest of the people are getting paid by Blizzard. So our game only works because our GMs volunteer to run these games. But what I hope is that the GMs get their own growth out of this, and also use the experience to become a better GM as well.
Yeah, and honestly, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say a few things there, which is GMs are getting experience points for their characters. So if you're GMing and you're a player, you are getting rewarded in the capacity of, that's a good way to earn experience. And part of our goal there is to incentivize, players that have an interest in GMing to step outside their comfort zone and start to explore that space and try to GM and, in an area where people are welcoming and interested and they want sessions and they want to help those GMs succeed. Go ahead, Darth.
Yeah, I was gonna just say, off of Derek's point about like how different this sort of experience is. Like you'll even see it whenever we sort of do announcements, events. There's a bunch of different ways that we sort of update the world throughout the season. But you'll see the ones who are always super excited about stuff that's happening is the GMs, because you'll see them say, "Oh, that is from when my players didn't kill the spider, and now all these spiderlings are all over the place." Or that's when my players they like closed a portal to hell or something in Northport, and that was like a big thing that, and you could see like the GMs were the ones that were in those sessions were like, oh, that's cool. My session made an impact on the game. And you can see like the players are always hyped too and everything
Sure.
like that. Especially like I said, there are a bunch of different things that they do, and we really encourage like most games to be very player focused and to have GMs create situations rather than experiences for the players. So there's definitely no like railroading or anything like that there, but just the GMs seeing that something from their session happened and it affected the world permanently is like it's such an empowering, cool thing to see. And also just if you have a session and you see people like talking about it and like preparing for your session, talking to other players about what happened in your dungeon or what happened in your hex crawl, what's happening with this faction, and seeing like players actively engage outside of like the session time is it's
Right.
super
Very
cool to
cool.
see.
I mean, I've said a lot of my streams about how, like, for me, one of the clearest barometers of whether or not your campaign is doing well, and I'm talking about like your home campaign, is if your group of, 4 or 5 or whatever players, do they have a group chat? Do they have a Discord? Do they have an email thread where they're talking about your game and it's Tuesday, and it's Wednesday? I'm not saying that your game is necessarily bad if they don't, but what I'm saying is, when you as a GM know that your players are thinking about and engaging with your game and you're not playing it, that's a huge indication. And so in the case of NR, you as a GM get that a lot. I mean, like way more than you would ever get in a home game, because people want to hear what happened, because they know that what happened in your session is going to potentially impact them in theirs, or they might want to get additional information and all that other stuff. So as a GM, it could be like you really do feel like you are part of this living, breathing, dynamic world, maybe even sometimes more so than you might in your own home campaign. Now, that comes at a cost, which is you're not the Lord God paramount of your universe like you are in your home campaign. In your home campaign, right, your word is law, and it doesn't go to anyone else. That is not the case here. We are asking our GMs to change it up a little bit and to be part of something rather than just going off and doing their own thing. We did have a question from Jedi Protector. What is the consensus on Starfinder 2nd edition classes? Are they allowed this season or not?
Yeah, no Starfinder classes, at least at the start of this season. I think two reasons for that, just to note. One is, people did have thematic woes around Starfinder, inside of the campaign. But I think the other is that just balance-wise, they are a
More
step
powerful.
up from...
Yeah,
they're more powerful than the average Pathfinder character has been. And so they just don't mathematically mesh as well as other classes did. And I know that's a goal or design goal for Starfinder, but I would say it's a bit over. Yeah,
they missed the mark a little bit, I think. And I mean, it'd be one thing if it was like, oh, this is this weird, cool, crazy, kooky thing, but then for that also to be more powerful is kind of like, it's not a good tonal mix. And especially since this season is an attempt to sort of take maybe the over the top level down a step to get a little bit back to the roots of, more of a small, more near, more small scope focus. Having android space warpers might not be the most, we'll do Sobi 2 at some point. Sobi 2 Electric Boogaloo, and everybody can create the most outrageous and insane characters ever.
Yeah, especially now that we have the shorter seasons. You never know what we could do after in the off season. Now that we have some extra time and everything. So
since we were talking about narrative impacts, I think it might be good to talk about the quest board in more detail, and like what that is and what it means, as far as the ability to shape the world and like the continuance of a story between sessions. just so everyone knows, the quest board is a core part of, let's say, was a core part of season 3. It's continuing and frankly getting some additional love in season 4. But the idea behind it is that you as a player or as a venue owner, someone who owns a venue in town, can request sessions that align with the type of stories that you want to see played out. So as a player, if I was in a session where that dragon escaped and I want to hunt down that dragon, I can say, hey, I was in this previous session, this dragon escaped, and frankly, I don't want it, roaming free in the world. So, I want to put together a party to go and tackle that. Well, a GM will look at that quest board and say, oh, that's an interesting story that lines with what I want to do, and pick up sessions. So a quest board is a way for a player to make a request for storylines to be continued, not necessarily to request specific items or specific outcomes, but to say like, hey, let's go chase down that dragon that got away. I remember finding a adamantine in a lake that I couldn't get to at the time. We didn't have any water breathing, but I want to go back to that lake and I want to try to mine out that adamantine. Like those type of things that you encounter in sessions, you can make a request. Or maybe it's a clock, like the pale, is over on the horizon and you see it. And while it isn't something that happened in a previous session, you really want to go and, try to find the source of what's happening in the pale. You can put in those requests on the quest board, and GMs are incentivized. They get a little extra experience if they pick up quests off the board because frankly, they're building a story around the type of requests that the players want to see, and we want to incentivize that behavior. But it was very successful. Like many of our sessions in season 3 were built around that board, what it does is reinforce, like if players want to see a storyline continuing, if players want to see some type of adventure happening, GMs have a reason to and are incentivized to pick it up.
Yeah, so hopefully you can see that a lot of effort, a lot of systems have been created to facilitate that form of collaboration, right? To allow the GMs to collaborate with each other, to allow the players for the GMs to collaborate with the players. Because again, in your normal group, one would hope you got your 4 players, and after the session, they might just say, "Hey, GM, I really would, it'd be cool for us to go do this." Well, you don't have your own dedicated GM, so quest boards are sort of a way for you as a player to basically say, I think this is really interesting and I'd like to see it. And, we have found that over the years that GMs love that, because you get immediate buy-in from your players when it's something that they basically requested. And we kind of had it as an informal system, going back probably even to season 1, right, Darth? But, with the formal quest board system, putting it into even a little bit of a little cherry on top for the GM to get a little bit of an extra bonus if they pick it up. I think it's just, last season was just such a success. So yeah, doubling down on that and continuing that in for great system.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention so on the venue side, right? Like one of the other ways that people interact with the quest board is like as a venue owner, you can put in a quest where you don't participate in the quest yourself. You're not saying I want to go on this adventure, and instead you're saying, hey, go gather berries in the woods, in the scary woods for me, or I really need this ore from the top of this mountain, etc.
Right.
It's a fun way for those people who are just in town players or primarily in town players to interact with the world and the story and say, go do this thing for me. And if you're a venue owner and your quest gets picked up, you get a small reward. You get extra actions in town, or you get extra experience or extra resources. So it's a fun way for them to participate.
It is highly disturbing to me, the number of people who looked at a game like World of Warcraft and said, do you want to be one of the epic adventurers? And they said, no, I want to be the NPC quest giver. I need 5 wolf pelts from the Elwyn forest.
Yeah.
But people did.
Yeah, but yeah, people, and yeah, like they already talked about it a bit. I think it was when I sort of came in, like the venue system is sort of really good to help you do that, and then you get to make impact on the game even if you can't play. Like for those quest boards as a venue owner, if you just had a kid or something like that, you're going to be able to play like, I don't know, maybe once a month or something. You can still be actively engaged and help sort of drive the story where you want to go, and you can do that through that. Or if you actually can play, it's really great to actually be able to just not necessarily force, because like I said, we have guidance about how to make situations out of these quest boards, so you're not always going to get whatever you want. Um, but you can really drive the narrative. Like if you want this cool ley line or something to open up in the northern wilds,
Wilds.
in FrostClan. I got to get used to that. But you can put quest words up, and if a GM thinks it's cool, you can sort of, even before the session starts, you can drive the story of what you want to see and how you want to see the town change through these quest boards.
Yeah, and again, I cannot reiterate this enough. The entire season runs roughly 6 months. So if you sign up, it would at the minimum tier. I'm not saying if you want to go higher, please. It is $60, people. Now, times are tough. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I got laid off a year ago. But if you're the type of person who might already be considering paying to play, say, an online game, or even just the cost of a single book, or a new Kickstarter, I promise you that if you want to, you will be able to get more than your fill of gaming, not just in terms of actual pickup sessions, but also in terms of just all these extra systems, all these extra levels. And again, you might find it a little frustrating at times because you can't just do whatever you want. But I think that's good too, right? Because restrictions breed creativity, and Northern Reaches isn't about telling your story, right? It's about creating our story. And that's what's really cool about it. At the end of the day, no one can point to it and say, that was all me. It's like, no, it was all of us, right? We all did it together. Michael T asks, how is mastercrafting going to work this season?
Yeah, so on
good.
on masterwork, there's only really one change, as far as that goes. One thing that we changed from previous seasons, like basically, so masterworks is the idea that you can, on a random chance, have a low chance with every craft you do to make a item that's unique and has maybe extra perks or benefits for whoever gets the item that you craft, or maybe you just make it and you store it in your bank and use it yourself. Last season, anyone who had this venue passive could do that with any item they crafted. The only change this season is we're trying to specialize crafting more, and make it so that it's less, how would I put it? It's more competitive. It's more, you can take your niche and you can't craft everything, but you can craft maybe a handful of items a week that serve in your particular area. So in masterworking, or the venue passive, specifically inventive tools, only applies to one specialty. So if you take inventive tools this season, it's going to be tied to, say, all of your runes, or it'll be tied to all of the artistry or whatever specialty crafting. We made unique specialty crafting categories for our game because, not everyone wants to be a shipbuilder or a stonemason. There's not that many options for that. So we chose to rewrite those a bit to make them all more universally useful. But you pick your specialty crafting area for inventive tools, and you can focus on that. But you can still make the masterworks just the same as last season. It's just one specialty.
Very cool. Again, and if it's not clear, what you'll do if you want to sign up, you can go to northernreaches.org. You can learn and read the Getting Started guide, which will tell you what you need to do. Step 1 is you join the Knights of Last Call Patreon. We got links there, but patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. Why aren't you already a member? But you're going to want to join at the champion tier. That's our $10 a month level. And then you follow the quick start guide. You're going to join our Northern Reaches. We're going to get you onboarded, which gives you special roles, make sure that you have all the access that you need to all the Forge servers and all that other stuff. And then you'll work with the GM to get a character sheet made. You'll probably want to talk with your fellow people. Because again, remember, the game itself doesn't launch for another 2 weeks or so. So during this time, a lot of people are sharing ideas, bouncing ideas around, talking about people, especially if you're interested in being a GM. You might want to get some, things started. And then when the game starts, we hit the ground running right off the bat. So I'm not saying that you can't join later on. One of the nice advantages of our system is you could join 2 months from now, and guess what? You'll be the same level as everyone else, and you'll have the same striking rune and everything else as everybody else. But it is a lot more fun, quite frankly, to join from the beginning, because every season is its own tale. And while we do respect the lore and the history of the past, I would say this season, more than ever, is more of a blank slate. And so this is really an opportunity for you to sort of come in there and, you know, be part of this collaboration and be part of this legacy at this point, really, honestly, Darth. I mean, this is, while it is season 4 of Northern Reaches, if you include things like Southern Beaches, Northman Challenge, and stuff like that, I mean, you know, this has been going on for 5 years, and we have this legacy now that stretches back to the very beginning of this channel, and it's really come a long way.
Yeah, and you'll see like people will, if you ask someone in the Discord who is only, even if they only played like 2 months of season 1 or something, what, 5 years ago now, they'll still have stories about like that narrative collaboration and everything going together there. I did want to point out Sarek's point there too. One thing we didn't mention about the quest boards. If you're a GM that has like a lot of creative block and stuff there, the quest boards are a really good mine just to get ideas to just run stuff. Not even like, obviously you get the player buy-in and stuff, which is really great too, but sometimes you just run out of ideas of what actually to run. So it's basically having a toad there for you, but with player buy-in. So
that's please, Whoople.
No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, so one of the things, you know, a lot of people do ask questions about GMing. So like, what are the requirement, like what are the minimum requirements to be a GM? Like, is there some sort of like mandatory minimum that you have to run? Like, do you have to run some epic involved session that's going to take, you know, 7 sessions to complete? Like, what is the bare minimum?
I mean, the answer is like, go ahead.
Go ahead, Darth.
Okay. As the bare minimum is basically 0. You'll see in our GM guide, we even have like, there's literally a guide there for like, I've never even touched Foundry before. How do I create this stuff? All the way to like, this is my first time running like a narrative collaboration type thing where I don't have total control. Here's all the guidance for this. And then like Derek mentioned before, you're in a space where there's a lot of other GMs, one in the GM chat that you can talk to, and 2, just as your players. But the way we're sort of set up is you can just run like a, you know, 3-hour one shot after the kids go to sleep one day, see if you like it or not. And if you don't like it, there no buying. There's no, we're not going to force you to keep playing or keep running games or anything like that. You're not signing up for like a 3-year campaign, 1 to 30 and 40.
But that's an important point, and I'm glad you made it, because look, we all know that there is a certain amount of social pressure when you, I mean, it's one thing to join a campaign as a player and then maybe decide, you know, I'm not really feeling this game. I'm not really feeling this adventure. I'm not really feeling this group. I'm not really feeling this GM. And then you step out, and that could be disruptive for sure. But, you know, usually your spot could get filled, or the group could just continue on with 3 people or 4 people, and it's fine. But when you're the GM and you want to run a game, it could be a lot of pressure, because if you say, guys, I'm not feeling this, sorry, I want to go to completely different, turns out Traveler is really the game I want to run. You know, it could be a real pain in the butt, because you're letting a lot of people down, and, you know, you're bumming a lot of people out, and, you know, they might have really invested in that. This is a really guilt-free way to dip your toe into GMing, and you could do it as much or as little as you want, especially if you have a really crazy schedule, or you're just not sure, or you don't want to be super committed. This is what's really, really, really nice about this system. It's the same thing as a player. You might be like, look, my schedule's crazy. I've got young kids, school, it's crazy. I might be able to play twice in a weekend or 1 time in a month. I don't know what I'm going to be able to play. That could be really hard for you to join a regular group, because that kind of inconsistency could be really problematic. But man, here you can participate as much or as little as you want. And I think that's really true. One of the real advantages to this style of play as well.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you just saw today, I just had a medical emergency I had to deal with that
Right.
got me like an hour late. Like, if that was like your normal game you guys are playing once every week, have been going for like 30 years, you can start to like really fall off. You start to miss like these sort of emergencies happen. But this style really lets you just throw in games or play or run games just to fit your specific gaps that you can actually fit in based on whenever you can actually play. And the 3-week cycle that we have, especially with how Pathfinder 2e works with the elite and week template, you can create something for, I'm going to specifically, I know I'm free this week because, March break is over, but but let's just say it's March break or something, and I know the kids are going to be at camp or something like that for that week. You can design stuff specifically for that week and target that week. You know what level everyone's going to be. And even worst case scenario, you have to push it back 2 weeks. You just throw an elite template on everything. But generally, like if you make something, you have like 9 weeks that you can play it with, because you can easily just throw a weak template or elite template on
Right.
something.
Which is
So,
literally clicking a button, right, in Foundry.
Yeah.
It's the easiest thing in the world. So, that's where, again, the math of Foundry really does help. The math of Pathfinder Second Edition and the convenience and the amazing power of the Pathfinder 2 Foundry module really just gives us a ton of, I mean, case in point, you could make an adventure for level 7, for level 11, and you pretty much will cover the entire campaign. Is that right? Because the level 6 or level 7 could be 6, 7, or 8, and then the level 11 could be 10, 11, 12. So you're like only missing like 2 levels there, right? Like it's not.
Yeah,
like
and then you just throw an extra like level 4, like 40 XP creature in there for the level 13. Yeah.
Right, and then for the level for the level 13, you put a PL plus 6 and just call it a day. So that's pretty cool. The Jackal says Darth Canada is showing when you called it March break.
Oh yeah, you guys call it like spring break or something, right?
Yeah, spring break is what we call it. Yeah. So we're coming up at 9 o'clock. So we're coming up on 2 hours. So again, I mean, this is about more than anything. I mean, our active and engaged players, people who've loved this game for years, they're engaged. They already know what's going on. This is really hopefully reaching you, a new person who might not know anything about Northern Reaches, might not know anything about our game system, the legacy, the history that you're potentially about to be a part of. Or maybe you're brand new to Pathfinder 2nd Edition and you're looking for something to get engaged with. Really, this stream was for you. It's really just to get you interested, to answer maybe some of your questions, to ultimately point you towards northernreaches.org so that you can see what you like, or take a look, see if you like it, and then really get you into the Discord. Again, yes, I do have a financial incentive in this matter, but it is criminal how cheap it is. Especially for the people. I mean, we have some people who, they're members of the Patreon. They support me because they're like, I love Derek and I love his streams and I want to support his vision. And then we have people who are like, yeah, no, I've never even watched one of Derek's live streams. I don't know if I could. I literally just am joining to play Northern Reaches. And that's, by the way, just a small part of it. Because if you join at the $10 level, you could play in Dragon Tide. You could play in Conquest of Moria once that launches. You could play in any number of other community-run games. You should at least try it out. If you're even remotely interested, if you love Pathfinder 2nd Edition, if you think this concept sounds cool, I really highly recommend that you give it a chance because it can be a really fun and rewarding system. And again, if it works out that you don't love it, no harm lost. You gave $10 to a very worthy cause in the form of my Patreon bank account, and I'll end up collecting $6.50. And then, maybe you end up finding that Northern Reaches isn't what you came here to do. Maybe you want to shit post about what actually is a game and spend, the next 25 hours navel gazing about, the definition of game with a capital G versus game with a lowercase g. Or you could join a heroic deeds play-by post. Yeah, maybe Pathfinder 2 playing it for real isn't good for you. Maybe you want to play it by post using our RPG Sage play-by-post Pathfinder 2 bot, and then you could play Pathfinder 2 as if you were playing it, by email or by individual post. There's a lot of ways. Boothby says, being banned from Northern Reaches was the best perk I got. So let me tell you about why Boothby was banned from playing Northern Reaches. Okay, number one, he wasn't actually banned from playing Northern Reaches. I just banned what he was doing. Boothby was like, I'm going to run an adventure, a series of adventures, and I'm going to run it with the same group over and over again. And I said, you're just running an adventure path. That's not what you're supposed to do. He goes, but that's what I want to do. And I said, well, then go do that. And so he did. And he's run, I think, 2, maybe 3, I don't know, adventure paths. For Pathfinder.
He's been running adventure paths since I joined.
Yes, correct. I'm saying, but I think they finished the one, and then they started the second one. So
You might get casually shamed by Boothby based on your actions, though, in chat later. Is what I've learned. Every so often, there'll be a pretty scathing Boothby post about his players' actions during their adventures. So, yeah.
That's all right. Boothby takes every opportunity he can to remind me that like 2 or 3 years ago, there was a tip goal to get us to play a Call of Cthulhu Halloween one-shot. It was filled, thanks to him, and it still has never happened. Instead, we got Vin to come in from Australia, and then we played Dread with a D&D hack of Dread in Castle Ravenloft as a Halloween game, and apparently that wasn't good enough. So, listen, you can't please everybody, okay?
Yeah. So I want to say Simone in 929's Blades in the Dark mega game win soon. I'm still thinking on how to do the crew stuff. So
yeah, I mean,
there's definitely going to be something.
We have been talking about that, Darth, for like probably as long as Northern Reaches has been around, right?
Yeah,
which is
like 2 weeks into NR season 1. Yeah.
Yeah, we were like, wouldn't Blaze in the Dark would be awesome? That's like the first thing that we said. We have obviously an internal meme such as reaches, is everything a reach? Here's the funniest part, Jekyll. Now Northern Reaches isn't even reaches. So it's now the Northern Wilds. So exactly. By the way, the Sarak, who by the way, I never see in my live streams, says, no offense to Derek, but I wouldn't even be here if this wasn't an R stream. I'd be playing some off-season Earth Dawn over on KLLC. So again, it's a community of gamers who want to engage with games. For some of people, that means talking about it. For a lot of people, it means playing it. For a good chunk of people, it means designing it. We have people who are trying to build or design their own game. We have a number of small independent game designers who are members of our Patreon, who have come and joined us because they really respect the education, the information, and the community's feedback that they get from their games. So again, it's a community ultimately harbored in gaming and creating a safe space for gamers to talk about stuff. It's not just a PF2 Discord. It's not just a 5e Discord. We really try to spread the love as much as we can. Jess says, Jess says, justice for Boothby's Call of Cthulhu game. You're saying, Darth?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's probably the most RPG nerd concentric place on the internet, probably, with a little bit of the paywall, making sure you get rid of the bad side of the hobby. So
yes, we're pro gatekeeping. That's usually the thing that I say. No, but we're small but mighty, and we'd love to have you be a part of our community. Really, is what it comes down to. And if all you're interested in doing is playing some Pathfinder 2nd Edition in a really cool and unique way, you could do a lot worse than this. So again, and you might find, we had people who came for Northern Reaches. They played more than you could possibly imagine, and now they don't even play Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but they're still members of our community because they found some other element or some other game that they love. We created Northern Reaches as a way to allow people to play Pathfinder 2, and now some people consider the mega game concept to be at the heart of what we do here, and trying to create, we have a Dragonbane mega game. I want to create a Wilderfeast mega game. I may be the only one, but I want to create a Wilderfeast mega game.
I'm in there with you. Wilderfeast is 6, so it's the best for mega games. So.
Yes,
we now have the mega game channel at this point for people to just discuss how mega games work inside the Discord.
That's one of our core questions now, which is, what does this game mega game? And we're always experimenting. A lot of the things that we learned from Northern Reaches kind of get taken and expanded elsewhere. We've always tried other things and other different games. One of the mega games that I'm considering, and by the way, again, you're not signing up with $10 to join Northern Reaches. You're joining Knights of Last Call. You're joining the Patreon. You'll get access to everything. But with the One Ring, I want to do a mega game of solo games. So everyone will be solo gaming, but together, right? It's like, parallel play, just to try to get rid of that one pesky ultimate boss, which is scheduling, and just let people play, basically solo games and then report into a communal shared space. Anyways, point is, there's always a lot of stuff going on. Northern Reaches is I won't say it's the tip of the iceberg. I will say it's the base of the iceberg, right? This has kind of been sort of at the heart of what we do for a long time. And even while this channel may not cover Pathfinder 2 like we used to, which is to say we used to cover it pretty much exclusively, and now we really don't talk about it that much. I think there are other better channels. I don't want to be false advertising to you all, and sit there and be like, I'm going to tell you about whatever, the Hunter, what was that stupid class that just came out in the beta?
Slayer and Daredevil?
Slayer. And when I'm not really up to speed, right, with the current Pathfinder 2 meta. But what I can tell you is that this community of Pathfinder 2 players is legit, and they are the truth in that respect.
What are you talking about? Isn't the Battlecry first look still up there? Like 20 places down?
It has been pushed down to like the bottom of the list, but yes, there is technically still
when PF3 comes out.
Yes, when PF3 comes out, they'll have gone full circle and released Battlecry for PF3, and then we'll cover that. By the way, Paizo, PF3 when? I mean, it came out in 2019. I mean, it's 7 years old.
Well, we got 2.5 already.
Stuff, yeah. With the remaster stuff, I feel like they were probably gearing up for PF3 at some point around then.
Well, they even said, though, they kind of pushed the trigger on that early or whatever. Not even early. They pushed the trigger on that because they felt like they had to, right? Because of the whole OGL thing. They may not have, quote unquote, do that, But I'll just say that, like, 3rd edition, which is considered one of the greatest editions, it was out for 3 years. They did 3.5, and then just 4 years later, 4th edition came out. So, just saying. Let's see here real quick. Edward says, have you left a like on this video? They really help. By the way, this video is not monetized. This video has no tip goal or stream goal, because I don't, if you were gonna, say this sounds awesome, you should instead take that $10 and go join the Discord and come play with us for at least a month or two and see if you really like it. And Woofle says all spells re-ranked when. It is still crazy to me, even though we were obviously we were a PF2 channel and I was playing a lot of PF2 at that time. That is still a crazy thing that I did there. It's like, I think
that was a lot of hours.
It's like 80 plus. It's like close to 100 hours. It might be over 100 hours, honestly, of just talking about every single spell. And of course, by the end of it, I was obviously insane. But yes, Jackals is still the #1 PF2 EU YouTuber by volume. Yes, because when that was done, we didn't stop there, right? We went and did the archetypes, which is, by the way, how I met Jess. For those of you who don't know, Technomancer is Jessica Redicop, who recently joined our Discord. So you can go talk with her about PF2 for the limited time until she quits after Origins. She just joined, by the way, Darth, so that she could help. So, because she's going to Origins, she wanted to plan to make optimal use out of the nightclub, and get.
Oh yeah, that's another. If you join now, you can still buy tickets for Origins and come to NightCon. See
NightCon
Session 0, Season 0. Yeah,
Session 0. Yeah, NightCon Session 0. Is Derek 100% a PF2E streamer now? Somehow, I doubt this. No, I am not a PF2E streamer right now. But again, I still really respect the hell out of this game. Honestly, I probably talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition far more than you think. And the reason is because I work the Roll for Combat booth at nearly every convention that happens. And I sell a lot of PF2 ebooks, in the form of Battles U Bestiary, in the form of Eldamon, in the form of classic creatures. So it is still very much a part of my, awareness and periphery. It's just not a game I'm currently playing. For example, I think Draw Steel is really cool. I'm just not interested in playing Draw Steel. Same way reason I'm not interested in playing any other sort of, pretty gritty, complex, a lot of movement parts, 5-foot grid type game. It's just not where my heart is right now. My heart is with dungeons. My heart is with narrative games, that literally have specific narrative mechanics, and that's fine. People's interest in games change, but that doesn't mean I don't respect the game. I do respect the hell out of the game. I mean, hell, one of the people I work with and talk with the most is Mark Seifter, who again, co-led, co-designed Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Let's see here.
Yeah, I think CCAV was saying in-person NR at Origins. We actually can now, so
Yes,
I'm
we
going to be
can.
there. Maybe if there's enough like NR players who want to actually do it, let me know. I will
Yeah.
actually run it in person there.
I
So
will say if we do. Oh, by the way, Duncan DT, thank you for the tier 1 sub. Appreciate it for 9 months. Really appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. Again, I know people can subscribe with their Prime, but if you want to subscribe with the tier 1 or tier 2, that's really awesome, and I really appreciate you for doing that. Thank you. Yeah, we'll come up with some sort of double XP at the con, for people
yeah.
running NR in person live, because those would be the first NR games ever run in person.
Do you not have? I thought like because Reverse and GM Scott were there like the first NR season 1. Oh no, yeah, I think you guys just did like a podcast talking about
Yeah, we just
NR
did a
episodes or
podcast.
something
Yeah,
like
reverse slalom and GM Scott were there. Yeah, we just did a podcast. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. I
There was
just
a question in
definitely won't be
chat
running a
from.
raid. So oh, sorry, go ahead.
There was a question in chat from Joseph, who said, "Best way to learn PF2E as a player." I mean, I'll give the answer and just say, it's a very welcoming group inside of Northern Reaches. So, I mean, it is a really good way to learn Pathfinder. Certainly, there's a lot of knowledgeable people who can help answer your questions, but also, even in your first session, answer questions or help you with your character and playing it effectively, or anything else that you might have. So, I don't know. I frankly. Most of my first games of Pathfinder were in Northern Reaches, and
Right.
so both from a GMing and from a player perspective. So I think it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, I will say this,
definitely on that
Joseph.
point.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you will be starting at level 6, so it's a little bit more complicated in that respect. But I will say that compared to, say, going up to some store and playing in some Pathfinder Society with a bunch of people who may not, quite frankly, give you the time of day, it's going to be way better than that. Or going to some con where you got some person who's burned out and overworked and they're trying to run a game for you. I mean, obviously, if you go and meet a GM who's really willing to sit down and with you and work with you, that's still probably the best way to learn it. But in terms of being able to like get exposure and access basically 24/7 to a really, really invested crew of people who are going to be super, super welcoming and nice to you to help guide you through your decisions and help you understand the implications of your game and answer any rules questions that you could possibly have. Yeah, hard to beat what we're doing.
And there's, I would say one of the things that we'll offer, and you can find GMs, I'm sure, who are willing to do this too inside of our channel, is just if someone comes in and says, I want to try a level 2 character or a level 1 character and understand the game, people will run that. People will play, and make some sessions to help you understand that, even outside of Northern Reaches or, as part of the Northern Reaches crew. Like, we are willing to help new players get familiar with the system even before they play their first NR session.
Yeah, and like everything we talked about before, you can sort of jam the game whenever, and even on the player side, it's like very low commitment here, right? Like you play a game, you realize that plus grab they can restrain you, and you think that's stupid. You don't want to play PF2E again. You can leave after that. So, it is a really good place to just learn and sort of get familiar with it. So,
Jedi Protector, you're right. That convention area is pretty big, by the way, which is why Knights of Last Call is officially sponsoring Origins, so that which means I spent thousands of dollars. So we actually have our own dedicated play space that is going to be just for the members of the Knights of Last Call. So we're going to be able to run our own games in our own space outside, kind of maybe a step away from the loud clanging of the busy halls and stuff like that. But yeah, it's gonna be, kind of sweet.
yeah. Also, yeah, Jackal just said we just got our first NR sign up to the Discord. So that's yeah, welcome Iradu. So yeah, hopefully some more people join. Like we said, like honestly, even if you're not even you haven't even tried PF2E yet, you just want to give it a go, or even if you just want to join the Discord, like it's some of the best RPG discussions and games you'll ever find. And also there's still like maybe Battlecry 3 at some point, but you still have Battlecry 1 and 2 in there. You have the GM guide in here that gives a lot of advice, not just for PF2, but just in general. So you can really step up your GM game there. And also, if you're just a GM who never gets to play, this is the perfect opportunity to find a community where you can actually play games. the one thing we're actually missing is players. We had a lot of games running with not enough players, so
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
probably like the only place, I don't know, that's like that.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, that's not like a Northern Reaches problem. It's kind of a Knights of Last Call problem. I mean, it's crazy to say this, but we really do need more players. We have a lot of people who want to run games. Especially like especially if like I cover some game and it really resonates with somebody and they're like, oh man, Oathhammer looks amazing, or Heroic Deeds looks incredible, or Nimble looks amazing, or Tactiquest, or Trespasser, or any number of these games. I want to run a game. I can't wait to run a game. That's the mentality of our community, which is like, oh, that game looks really awesome. I want to run it. It's not, and I mean, I know I'm talking to Darth here, who's like definitely like one of the kings of that. So we'll have situations where it's like, we'll have like 10, 20 people running games, and we're like, they need players, right? They need you. So while I certainly welcome any more new GMs, I mean, at the same time, like if you're looking to play games, please, by all means.
Yeah, like I think you talked to me at Origins for like half an hour about Daggerheart. I put up a game like that night.
Yeah, you were like, you were super skeptical, and I was like, oh no, Darth, it's this, and you're like, oh man, that's awesome. Oh man, that's awesome.
But yeah, even old games like I got a 3 game that's going to potentially be jumping up in this summer and stuff like that. We've had like BX games being run and stuff like that. I think Ben ran like some sort of like rogue.
He ran an AD&D first edition West Marches. So it was, again, we have a pretty eclectic bunch. I will say, in all complete transparency, the one thing we do not have of is a lot of 5e. Like that's the one thing. If you want that, you're not like going to be shunned, but like that's not what a lot of people are here for. So, but yeah, for sure. By the way, I love to see. We got a lot of these. We got a lot of NR vets who are like, oh dang, I might have to go to Origins now.
The only thing is, I'm definitely not going to run an in-person raid. Those things are fucking crazy.
No, that's so crazy. Although we could make like some kind of like, we could make some sort of like PF2 light version, like almost like a war game, like make some sort of like stripped down, simplified version, so that like your character gets like converted into a simpler format, so that we could play some sort of like mass, like some sort of mass war game, but like reflect mass your character rules. Using like
we can join that pile of people who made terrible mass combat rules.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. But anyways, very cool. But yeah, I mean, you can see here, right? We've got, Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat's going to be there. Jess Redicop is going to be there. So, I mean, we're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of cool people. I mean, I think we have like 35 people showed up. But anyways, it's not about NightCon. That's just one thing that we're also doing. It's about Northern Reaches. So, and hopefully what you're seeing here is you'll also be joining a community. How big that community is up to you. Now, for some people, we have people who are active and engaged every single day on the Knights of Last Call Discord, and they never leave the NR space. And that's okay. Their community is with those people, and that's how they choose to engage. And you know what? I'm hitting for it. I love it. Other people choose to discuss their other ideas about games, Pathfinder 2nd Edition, Mythic Bastionland, Draw Steel. And yet other people use the Discord as just a place of fellow gamers to sort of, discuss everyday ordinary things, like from working out to cooking. So we have a community that is sized to fit you, which is really ultimately what the mega game is about. It's about, finding your right size to you. And I think the changes that the council has changed and sort of, really evolved from season 3 to season 4 is really about, NR season 4 is all about you and finding a place for you as a player and for you as a GM, and to let you play to the level of engagement that you want to play, giving you a lot of freedom without shitting on or stepping on anybody else. And that, I think, is really the best I could ever hope for from a mega game. So I have very high hopes, very high expectations, and we hope that you will be a part of it. So, come check us out. You can head to, we've been posting it all the time. It's down on the doobly-doo, www.northernreaches.org. It's got information about building a player, the world guide, GMing stuff, all the things that we've discussed tonight. But also ultimately, it's going to lead you over to our Patreon, where you'll sign up. You'll get sent an email link with an invite that'll bring you into the Discord. You can then follow the instructions on Northern Reaches. Or if you're really feeling saucy, you can ask that ever perennial, endless legacy question, where NR? And you will be directed to the NR channels, where you will get onboarded and you could start meeting your fellow players and GMs, getting some cool ideas for a character build, getting more in depth with maybe some of the hidden secret lore of the game, and ultimately being part of this ongoing legacy of gaming excellence that we have persisted now through 4 or 5 years. So I think you would be a fool not to join up. Whoople, any final thoughts?
No, but hopefully, we'll see some new faces in the Reaches this year. Certainly already seen quite a lot of signups, happening. We just put up signups yesterday, so already quite a large number of people signing up for, to run or to play in games, which is great. Definitely excited by all the changes, the improvements season over season. Definitely want to highlight, the town, in-town functions and things like that for people who can't play that often but want to participate. Certainly there's an opportunity to engage at the level you want to. But yeah, looking forward to April 20th. Looking forward to the start of the season. I'll probably try to run something, that midnight or whatnot, so I can, get one of the early sessions going for it. But that's it from my side.
And again, if you're watching this later, realize that everything that we're talking about also applies to your flexibility of joining right now. As long as it's still, middle of 2026 and you're seeing this, come still join. It's going to be easy for you to get onboarded. You're going to be able to, now, yes, you may have missed some of the cool, bits and boops that happen in the early parts of the season, but you'll still be able to make a new character. You might be joining us at level 9 or level 10, but ultimately you can still be part of the action. And worst case scenario, you can always come back next season. There'll be another mega game, another season of Northern Reaches. There's always something just around the corner for that. So Darth, who's been with Northern Reaches for us since the beginning, what about you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think just we've sort of touched on this point a lot, but just to really hammer it in, like a lot of people in the Discord know me as like this random generation, like definitely not Ben level, but like procedurally generated and everything like that. The reason I was able to sort of refine that and try that out was because I was able to do it in NR in these like very low commitment spaces here. And yeah, and then we've already touched on it, but like this is like the best place of the to do it. If you don't like a rule, do something in the town, change it for everyone else. If you want something cool, go in there and do it. And we've heard a lot of the different sore points, and we've hopefully addressed a lot of those different things in there. So I think it's one of the best times to sort of jump in and give it a chance if you heard of NR before, or even if you just jumped in for a couple sessions season 1, you didn't like the Tarrasque Bone Flail or something like that, then this is a good chance to step back in. So
there should only be one person who should dislike the Tarrasque Bone Flail, and that's me, because I got completely annihilated by it in the raid because I had the spellcasting head of Triune, and I got to find out exactly what that stupid item did up close and personal, including the fact that it disrupted me, not on a crit, but on a hit. And my stupid head was not only deliberately targeted by all the players because they thought it'd be funny to kill Derek first, but also because apparently they were afraid of the brain burrowing thing that would permanently take over your character, even though it was the final raid of the entire season. But whatever. Yeah, as you can see,
one other thought that one other thought I have there is just if you want any evidence as to like the player impacts throughout the campaign, like the impacts that people have had on previous seasons, the current seasons, like just looking through the world guide, looking through the player's guide, looking at all the unlocks, looking at all the stories that are being told there. I mean, even like Shatterspine Ridge, I talked about those mountains earlier in the stream. Like the main gate that is like kind of the passageway for the train is named after one of I think the wielder of the Tarrasque Bone Flail.
It was the wielder of the
Hanag.
Tarrasque Bone Flail.
Yeah, so his name lives on in the Shatterspine Ridge. Still slapping in the face of Derek. But that's one of the best parts about the campaign to me.
Yeah, and honestly, like just a quick point to add on to that, like the community that sort of gets built up, especially as you start to run with some of these people play a little bit too much and run with play too many sessions with each other. Like you do make like really good friends and stuff like that, and you can talk to anyone, like anyone who is a big player still talks to some of the other big players and stuff, even like 4 or 5 years later. So
Yeah, very much so. Mike T says Derek still sounds a little bit salty. No, I'm not salty. Okay, it's just like I massively underestimated the power of the season 1 characters. Okay, let me just say that. From stupid. What was that stupid? Was that the season? Was that when Strat had the summoner? Or was that
no,
season
that was
2?
that was
No, that was
that was
season
season
two.
two.
Okay, that was season 2. That
Yeah,
was during
yeah.
the dragon fight. That was during the dragon fight. That was completely ridiculous. No. Season 1. That was gin and tonic. That was Freya. That was Hanog. Ugh, it was completely stupid.
And then the flame gut cape too in there.
Yes,
that
the flame
Hanog
gut
was wearing.
cape.
Yeah,
It's crazy, just completely ridiculous. I mean, there was other characters too, but I distinctly remember that stupid gun that Pumpkin had that just killed every single minion on the entire. And by the way, this was like it was called Actual Gun. That's correct. That was the name of it. It wasn't. And he killed every there was like 30 minions or something on the battlefield. And he killed them all in one turn. Anyways, or was it, what was the name of the Magus?
Alder.
Alder.
It was,
yeah.
Z played Alder. Yeah.
Yeah, Z played
Yeah,
Alder.
it like one shot the like resistance.
The unkillable. It was the unkillable.
Yeah.
It was designed. It was like AC 50, resist all 100 or like 150 or something like that, and it had like 100 hit points or something like that. And then he killed it in one hit. It wasn't even. I put it on the battlefield just as like it was almost like a weird like mechanical thing, and I never actually thought it would actually be killed, and yet sure somehow it did. Anyway.
Yeah, as a final, Giant Protector did ask when will the tavern be open. It's technically open right now. We actually have the sign up thread in the Discord. If you want, Bob's gonna be working on onboarding people, but once you get through that, you can start building your character and stuff. Even if you can still build in Path Builder by hand if you're like me and one of the only people who build it by hand anymore. You can still start building your character and stuff with the rule book right now. So
yep, for sure. And sorry I could talk about like at this point our lore is basically completely from what other people have actually done. Like realize that when you're reading through these lore documents, that's stuff that other players did, right, with their past characters. Like that legacy lives on. So again, that's why I really think about this now more than a mega game. It's a legacy game, and you could become a part of that legacy by signing up. So hopefully you will decide to join us. The reaches are calling. Will you answer? And I hope the answer is yes. All right. Well, thank you to my GM council. Thank you, Whoople and Darth, for being on. But thank you to all of my council members for the incredible dedication and work that you've put in over the last, it feels like year. But, this has been sort of long in the making. And I really want to thank everybody who sort of came on to help make Northern Reaches the best game that it could be. And thank you to all of the GMs who make the game actually happen, because without you it wouldn't work. And of course, thank you to the players, because ultimately at the end of the day, you are what makes this game, is what we're making the game for, and you're the ones who are telling the stories. The council and the GMs, they are just setting up situations. Ultimately, it is the players who are pushing the agenda forward, and I really, really love that about this game. So thank you to everyone, and we hope to see you next time in the Northern Reaches. All right, peace, everyone.